And really, it's financial intimacy that allows couples to be able to work through those differences. But I don't want to assume our listeners know what financial intimacy is. Can you perhaps explain it?
Yes. And, I chose that title on purpose, even knowing that it's not necessarily a widely used term, because my hope is that it becomes a much more widely used term. And it's the idea of intimacy, but having it derived from the way that you handle your finances, meaning money is actually an opportunity to work together as a team, which builds intimacy. It's an opportunity to get to know yourselves and each other better, to open up about things that you might feel nervous to share, being honest about your frailties or your struggles or your stresses. And if you can do that in this realm, it makes such a huge difference in terms of the quality of your relationship, but really also the quality of your finances too, because it just makes it, any plan you come up with then is so much more likely to stick, and that will pay serious dividends in the long run in terms of your financial situation.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because financial intimacy is certainly at the core of what is required for couples who do have perhaps like financial trauma in their background or complicated financial circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you said, money is so personal. It's so
Yep.
human. So, diving into this a little bit more deeply, what role does financial intimacy play in how couples talk about money?
When couples talk about money, the usually the immediate temptation, especially if you're feeling anxious or like you're struggling financially, is to try and figure out what we can cut or even how we can earn a few extra bucks. And those conversations are important and valuable. But what about starting by just talking about how your family handled money growing up and how you think that influenced you today? Um, Getting to understand each other more deeply will facilitate better conversation. And so even when things go awry, if you understand each other more, you will hopefully then have more compassion for each other. And the more you know about each other's point of view and each other's backgrounds and traumas and what have you, that's going to allow you to make better decisions, right? About how to approach things. It's like, imagine somebody who grew up really in poverty, and because of that, there's, regardless of one's circumstances, there's many different ways that it might impact you. Somebody in the same circumstances as somebody else, they could still have two very different relationships with money. But let's just say, for argument's sake, someone who grew up poor, and because of that, like the idea of being restricted financially is really stressful for them. Okay, well, if you don't know that and you're just kind of going about it, it's going to seem like they're resisting making any changes or any cuts or trying to be more mindful. And if you understood where it's coming from, then it can allow you to maybe slow down and say, okay, wait, so are there options that might help you not feel such a intense experience of restriction while also tending to our healthy financial situation, right? And then that opens up, okay, so maybe you have a certain amount of money each month that is yours to spend, no questions asked, and we build that in, right? As an example. And
Mhm.
the book really goes into a number of different ideas, and of course when I'm working with my clients, uh, we'll brainstorm all the number of different ways to achieve whatever it is going to matter to them and help them. So if you can understand yourselves, your needs, your stressors, it's going to help you make a much, much better plan. And then when you are talking about specific numbers or how to cut your expenses, it's just 100 times more likely to stick.
So this obviously, if you're hearing this, like, this is appealing, right? This is what everybody wants in a relationship. But sometimes the question is like, how do you start? What are the initial steps in creating financial intimacy in your marriage?
Talking, simply put, talking, but about what? about how you relate to money. I mean, some people use the term your money mindset. Uh, I use something maybe a little subtly different called your money and relationship story, which is this idea that you have a history with money, whether it was growing up or other points in your life or in other relationships or even at other times in your current relationship. And that's affected you in whatever ways it's affected you. And that all adds up to how you, at least by default, relate to money and handle money. And getting started talking about that, the good news is you're just sharing your experiences. So there shouldn't be too much to argue about there. And sometimes even just having a couple of conversations like that about money that don't lead to conflict and fighting can help regulate your nervous system a little bit so that
Right.
when you're going to go have your next conversation, you're not already like fighting an uphill battle. Um, but then, like I said, it also has those tangible impacts by helping you understand each other better, be more compassionate, be more aware of your own triggers, and then just having better discussions that come to better conclusions. But if you're like, okay, where within that? My favorite is how did your parents or caretakers handle money growing up, and how do you think that affected you? And then from there, you can ask really any kind of probing questions about money. Uh, One I ask my clients is, what comes to mind when you think of money? Like super open ended. Or what kinds of messages or narratives have you been exposed to related to your gender or your race or religion or any other kind of pieces of your identity, and how have those affected you? And it really opens up the door to a lot of insight and sometimes the opportunity to heal even kind of parts of your mindset that are uh, still hurting and in need of some love and attention.